Hello, and welcome once again to another fun-filled heretical episode of Inside the World of Mack's Headroom. Uh, you know, Today I want to talk about a subject that I've been mulling in my head talking about, and it's really kind of funny because, the name of my station, Inside the heretical world of Mack's Headroom. Well, I'm a true heretic, so I don't like to talk about things that are like really politically correct. But this is a subject that I really think is politically correct, and I think it's right. So I'm gonna, abandon my heretical posture for the moment and just try to discuss the subject of bullying. Yeah, it's politically correct. You shouldn't bully. What is it? Trump's old lady, she's talking about bullying or something, and oh, it's so cool and so me too and this and that. And, I don't want to do a presentation like that. Don't stop bullying. But what I'd rather do is try to break down bullying into as many different forms of bullying as I can to try to expose anybody who's watching, of my 6 million viewers, can never resist that one, that just by looking at the different, subsystems, the different types of bullying, the different ways it works, and the different outcomes that it tends to have, I hope to just kind of raise your consciousness a little bit, so that maybe a self-corrective process would start to anybody who's watching this. But then again, anybody who's watching this is probably against bullying anyway, so I don't know what the hell I'm doing exactly, but I want to at least make it known the way I look at bullying, and it's maybe a little bit heretical in certain ways. So anyway, here we go. First of all, I'm gonna start out with just telling you a brief little narrative of my own. I'm about 5'7". I'm about 150 pounds. I'm a real nice guy. Honest, I am. And I trust people. I had a very loving mother who taught me to, give people a fair shake. And so I would be what I would consider a very vulnerable target to bullying. Now, if you were to ask me, Mack, were you bullied much as a kid? I would have said, oh, fuck yeah, man. Man, was I bullied. Holy shit. But I got operational about it. Operational means when you take behaviors and you turn it into numbers. And I got operational about it one day, not too long. I was thinking about doing this tape. And I realized that the occurrences of bullying that I had amount to probably at most 20 occurrences. At most. Okay, more like probably 12. Over a 2-year span of time. And it only would occur on a Friday night when some gangster's child who was an asshole, whose father used to beat him, I found out later, used to pick on me. Did he ever beat me up? No. The worst thing that ever happened was he put me in a headlock and started threatening me for money, and I pushed him away and split. But if you were to ask me if I was bullied, I would say, fuck yeah. Now, just to tell you the end of this little narrative here, those 2 years, which were only amounted to maybe 12 episodes, never getting beaten up, never the horrible stories you hear about bullying. 30 or so years later, and I became friends with this guy. Not because we had a fight and this and that, we became friends. We just ended up becoming friends. I think because he knew I was learning martial arts and he was a chicken shit to begin with, and he befriended me. And of course, like any victim of anybody, when someone wants to befriend you who's been victimizing you, you identify with them and become friends, which I did, right? And I didn't see him for 30 years. I ran into him at a place, and without getting into all the details, I sort of humiliated myself by embarrassing him. 30 fucking years later, and after a period of being friendly with him longer than he bullied me for, because it maybe occurred 12 times, and we ended up being friends, and it made me feel good like he liked me or something. He never bullied me again. And when I ran into him this time, it was with a whole bunch of people standing around that were like admiring him for certain reasons I don't want to mention. And I'm not going to go into it, but I said something quite rude, and I kind of made a little bit of an ass of myself, but I couldn't help it. Because even though we were friends, and even though it was a handful of times that this happened, and I was never hurt really physically, I still carried around a burden in me that 30 years or 40 years later, when I ran into him, after having been friends with him, I humiliated myself by embarrassing him in public. You follow? Now, what does that tell you? I mean, think about it. Does that mean I have an impulse disorder? And I don't think so. Well, maybe sometimes, but not usually. But no, it's because even those handful of times, they happen to happen between 7th and 8th grade, those 2 years, and a little bit into freshman high school, maybe. But it was never much. It happened at a dance, and there were only 2 dances that it could have happened at, and then maybe at the dances it only happened a total of a few times. I mean, it's not that much. But it was so oppressive that I always hated that son of a bitch. And even though we were friends and it felt good for the time being, like any good old victim would be, when I had the opportunity and I was a man and I knew I had him by the potatoes, I let go. And I look back and I say, you made an ass out of yourself. Now, like I said, I later found out that his father used to beat the shit out of him. And actually, he told me that, but I don't want to get into details. But what I'm trying to say is, 1, I was hardly bullied at all. 2, if you had asked me if I was bullied, I would have said, fuck yeah, I was bullied. And 3, the bullying, the minuscule amount of bullying, which really didn't have a lot of intrusion, still led me to actually kind of make an ass out of myself just to get away with embarrassing him in front of a bunch of people. So what does it say about bullying? It says it really sucks. That's what it says. It's really dangerous. It's really bad. Now, I hope I set the tone with just showing you how a small amount of something like that can just produce a result that, wasn't earth-shaking or anything, but it was certainly out of character for me, kind of. I got known for doing little things like that once in a while, but there's usually a reason. And there definitely was. I hated the guy. It didn't matter. I had this. And now, I don't care. I forgive him. It's all over. And it was hardly anything. Okay, enough with that. 7 minutes. But if that can serve as something that's isomorphic to the broader subject of bullying, can you imagine what happens to people who are really seriously bullied, beaten up, tormented, and that type of bullying? I'm going to get into the types now. Okay, that type of bullying is what I would call like schoolyard bullying. And before I go on, let me just take a minute and read the definition of what bullying is, because I think it's very interesting the way it was defined here. Okay, ready? Bullying is an ongoing and deliberate misuse of power in relationships through repeated verbal, physical, and or social behavior that tends to cause physical, social, and or psychological harm. It can involve an individual or group misusing their power or perceived power over one or more individuals who feel unable to stop it from happening. It's a great definition, isn't it? It's no longer a kid's thing. You know what I mean? That's my point here, is I'm going to try to broaden it into all different ways. So, you got schoolyard bullying. And the interesting thing I want to just mention about that is when you study a lot of these guys, not that this is not statistically reliable or anything, but it sure seems I'm a true crime fan, and so anytime you read about these guys like Columbine and all these different mass shootings and stuff, all of them were bullied. David Parker Ray, who I think I did my most recent tape on, who I think is one of the worst serial morons in the world, was bullied by his father like every minute they were in each other's company. He constantly was bullying him to the degree that he would take out a strap and whip him. Like, you don't look right, whap, or he would torment him. I mean, so, the thing is that I think a lot of these people who are in school shootings, who end up doing murders, if you trace it back, I'm not saying back to its roots, but back to some level of its development, right, its evolution, you're going to probably find that there's been bullying of some kind that's been involved, because it's a really torturous thing. Look what it did to me just in terms of my crazy behavior 40 years later, 30 years later. It's nuts. So imagine what happens when somebody is really fucking bullied. So with that in mind, schoolyard bullying is what I think people tend to, at least people my age tend to think is what bullying is. But see, you could start really broadening it. So, of course, what am I going to mention? Cyberbullying, okay? But there's all kinds of fucking cyberbullying. It drives me absolutely crazy. And there's also behavioral bullying that I think people don't really think about as bullying, but it really is. And so I hope by just kind of inundating you with this massive, forms of bullying, maybe it'll just, I don't know what, maybe it'll just make people aware of how destructive it is, and therefore it will set into motion a self-corrective process, okay? So, if you talk about cyberbullying, first of all, let's talk about just like trolling, okay? Trolling's awful. Trolling is really an awful behavior, and I'm going to get into it in a minute about how it gets very massive. But, on the cyber reality, you have this thing, doxing and trolling, and which are, I think, more common, in my opinion, forms of cyberbullying. But what do you read about when you read about people that have been cyberbullied? Now, don't quote me. I would appreciate any comments in the comment section below regarding this. But it seems to me that more of these kids that get involved in getting doxed, and not even kids, people who get doxed, who get, that kind of thing, they end up killing themselves. It doesn't seem, maybe they do, maybe they also become, other trollers or something. But what strikes me is that you read about a lot of them committing suicide. Where when you read about the victims of the schoolyard bullies, a lot of times they become the bullies themselves. Or they get depressed. I don't know how many of them actually kill themselves from being bullied. But the cyberbullying, because it's so anonymous and it has such massive, extensions, it just seems to me like one of the end products of being, successfully bullied, cyberbullied, is ending up killing yourself. That's what it seems like. It seems like happens. I don't know. Your comments are welcome. But within this cyberbullying, you also have one that is probably one of my favorites, which is the comment section below. As a YouTuber, I don't only consider myself a content maker. It's all I watch really is YouTube, so I watch a lot of it, and I like participating in the comments because I think it makes YouTube a interactional form of TV that's very different than anything I've ever come across. So I kind of like that. But I'll tell you something. I have seen some of the worst behavior happening in the comment sections that it makes me want to puke. And what is it? It's bullying. It's people bullying each other. It's, I could take, my definition went off. But, it's people that are in a relationship that are using their power to force people to feel shitty. And, I can give you a couple of different examples, but I'm not going to mention the names of the channels. There's one that I've been caught in, okay, where they do something I just don't fucking like, okay? Now, it's a comment section. As long as I'm polite, I can question what they're doing, especially since I'm Jewish and there are some anti-Semitic misuses in this particular TV show or YouTube station, okay? And I don't like a lot of the other things that go on anyway, but when the anti-Semitism comes out, I just don't dig it. It's not funny to me at all. And so I posted a very polite comment suggesting that they might ought to knock off the Goldstein thing and hint, hint, and perhaps try to just do their predator poaching in a more less racially discriminating way. Well, guess what happened? My comment got pinned to the top, okay, by the station owner or whatever. And then, of course, he's got a cult of rabid, vicious followers. And so he pins my comment at the top, and then everybody starts saying shit talk to me. Like the famous one is, oh, what's your license number? Oh, I gave away what the station is. I'll bet you're one of those, and they start to attack you massively. And of course, your first instinct is to defend yourself. God forbid you do that. Then, you get raped, hint, hint. And, it's totally obnoxious. What is that? That's bullying. And that's bullying at the level of station to, it's bullying in the level of the comment section. I've also seen it happen on another station I am super fond of. And the guy has actually done a mission statement. He says, this is why I'm doing this. And yet not everybody, but I'd say 40% of the commenters are not doing that, working with what he's trying to do. Instead, they're trying to find out, they're trying to do like detective work. Oh, is that person really telling the truth? Oh, I think that person's high. Oh, I think, and really all the guy who's doing the production, whose name I'm not mentioning, his mission is just to expose people to the like underbelly of life and realize that it's there and we should accept it and appreciate these people as people. And yet all these commenters are, saying, I think, she did this. Oh, I did a Facebook check on her and she's really that. Who the fuck cares? That's what I would call comment bullying. And I see it all the time. It doesn't happen to me a lot. And now I hope this isn't a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I don't see it happening to me. But I have seen it when I've commented on other people's stations, and I'm not a nasty commenter. So anyway, that's that. Okay, then you got another one, a form of bullying. And that's what I'm sorry, I get a little cramp here. That's what I would call station-to-station bullying on YouTube especially, or what I call the YouTube wars. I love it. I don't love it. No, I mean, I hate it, actually. But that's when somebody makes a living picking on somebody else. There's one very infamous one, and again, I don't want to mention names. I don't want people mentioning my name if they're going to disagree with what I talk about, but I think you probably all know who these various characters are, where one person emerges as an asshole, and then the other person emerges as the asshole's confronter. And makes a living repeatedly, week after week after week, everything that this other person's doing that proves the point that he's an asshole, yet everybody knows he's an asshole anyway, so what's the point of this show? It makes no sense to me. But he's bullying him. And what he's doing in bullying, he's not bullying him bad because he's got a kind of innocent way of playing things off, But what he's really doing is bullying, and he's also encouraging this other guy who is a total idiot to be more of an idiot because now he's got someone to rebel against who's making a living doing it every week. You follow? So it becomes a circular, self-fulfilling, sort of, organizational structure. Okay. Now, here's, I think, my big one. And that's what I'm going to call bully stations. And I just recently got introduced to this. And I don't want to get too carried away with this because I actually am scared of getting bullied myself. But there are some stations on YouTube, and sometimes they run on secret. I found one the other day that runs like on a Dropbox, And what they basically do is they just find somebody to pick on. And they ruthlessly pick on them. So it's like a station bully. It's a bully station. But of course they have justifications for why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, of course they're not going to just pick on some person. The person they pick on is very vulnerable to being picked on because he's an idiot too. But nonetheless, my point is that this one particular station I'm thinking of, the person they're picking on is such an idiot that everybody knows he's an idiot. So why do they have to do this bullying? And it gets real intense, like swatting and like calls to the Child Protective Service. Oh, let's waste the Child Protective Service's time trying to make a point being a bully on YouTube. This is a particular one, and I'm going to do a whole show on this. Not them, but this whole phenomenon, because I'm sure there's more that exist. But it's like my biggest observation is the person who is the object of the bully station that is being bullied, he gets lost in the fray. All of a sudden, that person is no longer even part of the argument because everybody's taking sides and bifurcating and polarizing. And now you got wars going on between these bully stations. So now at least you got two bullies bullying each other, But it's still rather sick. I'm sorry. I watched one that came up on my recommended because I went to one of these stations. I couldn't believe what I saw. I felt like I was on the dark web watching child pornography. Even though I've never been on the dark web, I've never watched child pornography, but it was like I felt so out, like, oh my God, I'm in this weird place where people actually like attack each other and make a living at it. It's bizarre, but it's bullying. And somebody's going to get hurt. I guarantee. All right, enough with them. I don't want to get hurt myself. Now let's broaden it a little bit out of social media again, okay? And let's look at what I'm going to call like sexual harassment bullying. And I'm going to keep that separate from sex abuse for a second. Oh, I'll probably get some bad comments for that one because the guy I'm going to use as an example would be like Harvey Weinstein, who's a total moron and a total monster. But what he is a sexual bully and a rapist. You know, I mean, he bullies people into doing that stuff. And I'm glad he got 23 years. I mean, it's great. But he's a master bully. You could call him an ingenious producer, but he's a master bully. That's what he is. Let's broaden it some more, okay? Like, let's talk about child abuse. Isn't child abuse bullying? You have a bigger person in charge of a lesser person, whether it be pedophilia, incest, whatever it is. You know, you've got a bigger person taking advantage of a less vulnerable person, and look what happens. That person either gets PTSD, becomes an offender, or becomes suicidal and self-mutilating. I mean, it's not all cases, but you know the story. Kids who are sexually abused who don't get, you know, the right help they need oftentimes end up, sadly, being very self-destructive in a variety of ways. So what is the major cause? You could say it's sexual abuse, and it is, but I'm going to say it's bullying. It's just a sexual abuse form of bullying. And I don't mean to minimize the sexual abuse part. I'm just trying to make this broader point that all these things have to do with fucking bullying. Okay? Let's look at, country to country. Let's talk about that. How about our, at least for the time being, I hope, only for the time being, president, Major Bully. That guy's one of the biggest bullies around, and I don't think that, I mean, one, I don't care if anybody disagrees with me about that. I think there's enough public media out there that would agree that the guy's a fucking bully. And, you know, look at what's his name, Putin. He's not a bully. He's a cyber bully, in my opinion. You see, there's a little difference. I would say that Trump is more like a schoolyard bully, but I think Putin is more like a cyber bully. So there's another example. Of course, you got catfishing. Tell me that ain't bullying. You're lying about who you are to push somebody around to get what you want, and they're vulnerable to get it for you, to give it to you. That's bullying. It's catfishing. So, I'm just trying to see if I got any other fun ones. Well, I don't here. But if you all think of any other forms of bullying that you see going on around, please put them in the comment section below. Because I'd be interested. I guess the whole point of this tape is that bullying is really very destructive. And you can trace it back to all kinds of consequences that end up with much bigger things. You know, you can minimize bullying, but do you minimize when Columbine occurs? And I don't even know if they were bullied, but I bet you they were. You know, do you minimize bullying when it comes to you know, all these people that do terrible mass murders and shit like that? You know, people probably don't think about bullying as much. They just go, oh yeah, well in his history he was bullied. You know, well, big deal. But no, he was bullied. That is, if you think about the story I began this whole show with, there's an example. I mean, I did a terribly stupid thing, and it wasn't terribly stupid, but I mean, it wasn't in my best interest. And that was over nothing. So can you imagine what happens when any of these things occur? What I'm trying to say is it seems like cyberbullying, that sort of doxing and trolling and shit like that, always ends up with somebody killing themselves. That's what it seems to me. You know, when you look at country-to-country bullying, you get wars and stuff. You know, when you look at, you know, bullying, you get, you know, when you look at sexual bullying, you get Harvey Weinstein's. I mean, it's a common denominator that runs through a whole shitload of social problems. And I think that's it. I hope I made my point. I hope that I don't have any solutions. I'm not going to go give you the, you know, bullying hotline or anything like that, because you can find it yourselves. But I hope that if you look at bullying as such a broad social problem, and can separate Melania Trump. I think she's into anti-bullying, but I mean, because see, she gives the politically correct version, which is get absolutely nothing. But I just hope you get the idea. Bullying and a lot of social problems go together. So maybe the more people become aware of that, maybe the more motivated they'll be to somehow, I don't know, do something about it. I don't know. But I just wanted to present this. So thank you very much. And once again, this has been another heretical, fun-filled episode of Inside the World of Mack's Headroom. Bye-bye.